Welcome to a day in the life of planning your translation project. The Polaron team would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians throughout Australia and their continued connection to land, sea, and the community. Before we begin our webinar today, I would like to start with the agenda. We will firstly introduce our panelists and hear from Polaron's founder. Before we will move into our presentation, then the panel discussion, and finally, finalizing with the Q&A. First of all, I would like to introduce Carla Fuentes. Carla is the head of community engagement here at Polaron and plays an active role in planning out the translation project for our clients. Thank you, Carla, for joining us tonight. Next up, I would like to introduce Kerstin Greeneberg. Kerstin is a project officer in Land Foundation Australia's occupational land disease team and is a current client of Polaron. Kerstin is working to improve lung health and reduce the impact of lung disease in Australia. Wonderful to have you here, Kerstin. And finally, I would like to give a warm welcome to Eva Hussein. Eva is the founder and director of Polaron Language Services, is a certified translator, interpreter, and NATI examiner. She will be our moderator for our panel today. Over to you, Eva.
Thank you. I just wanted to say before we start with the presentation that I'm very excited to be talking about this topic. Don't worry if you think it's dry and boring. It isn't. We're going to make it very exciting. We're very pleased to have Kirsten and Carla on board to go a bit more deeply into project management. So thank you both for allocating your time and providing your knowledge and experience to this session. Those of you that haven't worked with us, just very briefly, Polaron was established in 2000, so we've been around for 23, 24 years. We have offices globally, but based in Melbourne. You can see behind me, it's a bit cloudy today. We work with clients who have a message to disseminate to multicultural communities in Australia. We help them craft it, we help them make it engaging and resonate with the communities we serve. We work with around 1,500 NATI certified interpreters, translators, also bilingual workers, researchers. It's quite a diverse mix of people we're working with. And I think it is now my cue to hand it over to Carla.
Thank you so much, Eva. Hello, everyone there. It's lovely seeing you all again. So we wanted to give you a brief presentation with some tips and recommendations on how to plan your project. Please, next slide. So before you start planning your project, I would like you to take to question yourself. Stop for a moment and ask these 4 questions. The first one is, does this project need to be translated? Sometimes we don't need to translate everything. We don't need to translate all the pages in the brochure, all the books, all the fact sheets. We really want to know what is the information that is relevant for our audiences. Number 2, is this information available elsewhere? Maybe there are other web pages, and maybe there are other organizations that have already translated this information, so you don't need to translate it anymore. Number 3, is translation the best way to present your information? So we want to think, how do you want to present this information? Is it in a graded format, maybe doing an event, launching in-person sessions with interpreters, maybe it's video, audio, or bilingual template fact sheets? So sometimes we have to sit and think, what is the best format to engage with our audiences? Number 4, are there any other organizations you could join forces with? Sometimes we don't have to go to the battle alone. Sometimes we have allies within your industry that you can work together and include more translations, do other type of resources. So please, before you start a project in translations, ask yourself these 4 questions. Next slide, please. Here are some tips and recommendations. I would love everyone to first think about what you want to communicate and who your audience is. Sometimes audiences might be from different genders, from different backgrounds, different age groups. So how does your audience like to get their information? How do they communicate? And in which channels you can share this information to them? Planning the project's outset minimizes the risk and enhances the likelihood of creating high-quality, purposeful translations. That's another thing. We have to also make sure that we don't have many risks around the project, and we do a final outcome that is respectful for our audience. Project planning saves time, money, and improves outcomes for you. Who doesn't want to save time and money? Sometimes we're very, very busy. But with giving yourself and your team a time to really plan the project, it can really save you much more work that you have to do along the process, as well as time, reduces the time and money. And it can improve even the quality of what you are providing to your audiences and engaging even more with you and what you want to communicate. Next slide, please. So this is some other alternatives to give you a little bit of ideas for you. We want you to take at least something of value back at the office, back at home. We're going on holidays soon here in Australia. So these are other alternatives that you can consider when you want to communicate with your multilingual audiences. For example, podcasts. I love podcasts. There's a lot of people within my generation and other communities that love podcasts. So maybe that's an idea. Communication cards. We have worked a lot with communications cards in the aged care industry. Infographics. Sometimes our audiences are more visual. Sometimes this information can be shared even easier if you do it through social media channels or WhatsApp. And there are other ideas here, but please feel free to also explore. And in the translation process, this is just an overview of how we do it here at Polaron. In the first stage, you can look at what's your budget, have an idea of how much you have in the budget to spend on this process, and then also make sure that you have your profile of your target audience. By this location, ethnicity, literacy rates, there are some audiences that might not have literacy rates, not only in English, but also in their own language. So audio formats could be a great idea. Gender and age as well. Then what's the purpose? We always ask to our clients and organizations we work with, what's the purpose of this project? Is it educational? Is it engaging? Is it you inviting them to an event? What is the purpose of this translation project? Timelines. Try to allow some days within the timelines as well, because things happen that can, because of, it could happen that you get sick, or there's a delay with a language that you might need to expand your timeline. So please take into consideration allowing some days there for any extra updates, feedbacks. Then the format, because you have different target audiences, you might have different formats for the translations. Of course, maybe in this translation process, you don't have the budget for all the formats, but you can keep in mind that format for an additional format for a future project. And then prepare. When you have the source file, please try to, and if it's for an audience that literacy rates are low, please try to write in plain English so people can understand. Even sometimes I struggle to understanding some information that I find online. And then finalize text, because that makes it even easier in the translation projects. When you modify even a word, it can delay the translation project, because we have to, again, check it with the translator. So by finalizing the text would be great. Then you agree on the final product and then send it to us. And also, please let us know the deadlines. In our translation process, we also have another layer of checking, either by a second NADI certified translator or by a community organization, community member, or by both, depending on what is the level of translations and level of reviews that your project needs. And then once we send you the information, the translated documents, naming them and storing them, it's important as well to having the versions of the information and the resources, and then review, evaluate. We always like to get your feedback. We want to know what is the outcome of this translation. Are you using them? We were happy to know and provide any other assistance. And next slide, please. And this is the translation quality metric. So if you think, okay, I have a translation project, what could be the best translation service levels that I should get for this translation project? So here we have, for example, if you have personal documents, letters, internal documents, you might only require a translation. And of course, we do a quality check-in. But if you have brochures, websites, fact sheets, and app, we always recommend to have it translated and also check it, because that way you have two people looking at the translation, and it could be checked by a community member or by a secondary certified translator. And if it's glossaries, material, marketing materials, community educational materials, this is the one that we recommend to have all the layers of review and checking with the translator, a secondary translator, and a community member as well. All these steps have the quality checking by the Polaron team. Thank you so much. And I think I'll pass it over to you, Eva.
Thank you. So that was a very fast and very succinct summary of what happens behind the scenes. But so that you know, Daniela a few months ago managed a project that had more than 500 people behind the scenes. So take heart and hopefully by showing you what happens behind the scenes, we will help you understand how complex management of certain projects can be. I would like to now start our panel discussion and invite Kirsten to, first of all, say a few words about the organization you represent and what you do at Lung Foundation Australia, please.
Sure. My name's Kirsten and I'm in the occupational lung disease team at the Lung Foundation Australia. My team specifically focuses on providing preventative and educational resources around occupational lung disease, targeting at-risk workers in certain industries, trying to inform them and upskill them around what are some potential exposures and hazards that they might be coming into contact with in their workplaces. Topically, you might have heard about silicosis or asbestosis. They are all occupational lung diseases. So we provide preventative resources, just trying to encourage people to be considerate of their lung health and speak to their doctor about their workplace exposures as well.
So your organization isn't new, I guess, in this space, but some of the conversations we're having are, because it is a fast-moving space, right, in terms of lung health and also how, I guess, governments and organizations focus to make it a priority when it comes to communicating of the key messages. And I think it's also fair to say that because we are so diverse in Australia, sometimes those diverse communities, it takes a while to start communicating that message. So in your daily practice, how embedded, the diversity that we live with and breathe every day in is embedded in what you do?
I think our team has been fortunate to be a bit of an exemplar for the rest of the organisation in terms of providing translated materials. We have identified that there are a number of at-risk workers from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds who may not be getting the same information because of the language barrier. So that was a big reason as to why we wanted to provide these translated materials about specifically occupational lung health. And the organisation as a whole is definitely looking towards translating additional resources about other lung conditions in different languages too.
Right, and it can be quite a complex process to understand who are the communities that are most affected. So we've looked at different statistics and demographics with you, I think, as we went along this journey, because the information can be a little bit limited in terms of who this affects most, right? Like lung disease.
Yeah, definitely. And occupational lung disease specifically is really, there's no national, I guess, registration currently that keeps track on who's impacted by this. So it is really tricky to figure out what communities kind of need this information the most. Prior to me joining Lung Foundation, a colleague of mine did a lot of scoping around looking at our target audience in terms of a specific age range. We're looking at mid-20s to 50s, people who are employed in what languages that they're speaking. So that was kind of how we determined the languages that we translated our resources into.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was Maria, and she's left quite a legacy. She was very, very passionate about this stuff. So when you plan a translation project, and as Carla has already covered, it's not just about developing resources in English, translating in 20 languages and putting it up on a website somewhere where people cannot find it. Because we know also, and correct me if I'm wrong, that much of the lung conditions or men are more affected than women, or am I wrong?
Well, I guess in the occupational lung disease space, primarily the industries that are most affected do have majority male workers. Not to say that females aren't impacted, but definitely just because of the industry, males are more at risk.
Right. So whenever you plan a project, and I often see that within organizations, it's not unusual to have someone that's very passionate about this space like you, but maybe doesn't have or hasn't done much of this type of work before. So when you plan institutionally a translation project, the first thing you'd be looking at is what information do we need to provide to whom, and how do we find the best way to use our budget, our resources, and all of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we've been fortunate to be funded by the Federal Department of Health and Aged Care for a lot of our activities. So part of that was the inclusion of translating into those different languages as well.
Mm-hmm. And of course, when we look at the costs of not translating or not providing the right information with something like lung disease, it can be quite high, for the community or the health system. And I think some of the work that you do and the measures that you put in place as far as education is preventative, I would think, yeah? So it's also about educating different communities about how to prevent, how to detect, and what to do about if you're feeling symptoms, or how does that work?
Yeah, definitely. Our main, I guess, goal within our team is definitely to provide that information about what the hazards are. What can individuals do to protect themselves? What are their, I guess, bosses or their workplaces? What are their responsibilities to protect them? And what do I need to tell my doctor? Because the main thing is we're encouraging people to speak to their doctor and telling them about the different workplace exposures that they're having in their workplace. So then they can start having that conversation we can be looking at their lung health as well.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about best practice or good practice in translation, what would you say for you, for your organization and you personally, what would you say are some of the key considerations, to make sure that it's a successful venture, because a lot of work goes into it. You've experienced it yourself. Tell us more about that.
So I find definitely working with Polaron and the addition of the community checking, I personally find that to be very advantageous and really allows us to kind of make sure that the information we're providing makes sense, is culturally appropriate, and is beneficial to the communities that we're aiming towards.
And that could also mean crafting the message in a way that in the first instance is written clearly. Because, online, I've seen we've got lots of people watching this webinar on, live, and a lot of translators have this frustration with source documents or, documents in English being created in such a way that it's then difficult to translate. And often it's the translation that's blamed for lack of clarity. And yet, as a translator, you have to stick to the original as much as possible. So at your end, Kirsten, how much work goes into crafting those messages that are super clear, super direct, and super efficient?
Quite a lot. We have like a number of, I guess, review processes within our team. We always try to make it as concise, readily available and so that you can understand it, and as clear as possible, because we are sometimes trying to communicate really complex issues, particularly within the occupational space, and being health messages as well. It can be really hard to kind of narrow it down in a way that a lot of people can understand. So we, firstly, to make sure that the content itself is accurate, we get everything, a lot of our things reviewed by subject matter experts. And then we have a layer of review through peer reviews of colleagues of mine, and as well as management, and with lots of experience in providing clear, easy to understand resources.
I am just so pleased you've explained it in that way, because there are, at your end, there are lots of things that happen before anything is available for publishing, meaning that you involve people internally, but potentially even externally, that are subject matter experts, that are communicators, that are professional writers. So then it wouldn't be fair to expect one translator to do justice to that process and to that communication. So going back to what you said initially, that community review can really help with making sure that whatever we've translated is fit for purpose, that the communities are actually going to read it, understand it, and take action, because the whole purpose of whatever we produce is to make a difference to people's lives, I think. So many of our translators are very experienced, but myself being one, I know that I wouldn't send anything out anywhere unless it was checked, because guess what? I also make mistakes. And I think it's also about crafting those messages or in another language that are really relevant to not just the language, but educational levels, literacy, and also how people acquire information. So, Kirsten, you've been in the business of communication for some time. Like, are you seeing how the way that we present information has changed over the last few years?
Definitely. I think like we have, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but we also do a facilitate a campaign. And we've noticed that our most engaged resources are definitely our video-based resources. The fact sheets are always good as a good source that people can go to and share. But videos, if you can display a message in a couple of minutes, it's definitely going to have a bigger impact.
Yeah, I think people expect information to be more specific, kind of chunked. We are time poor. I think, digest information differently now that a lot of video content and sort of short, sharp messaging is created in the mainstream. I think the expectation from the community is more or less the same, that we're not going to be overwhelming people with long-winded, reams of paper, because it's just not how we communicate nowadays. So you are seeing those changes, and I think in terms of measuring effectiveness of the campaigns, you can also, things like video, you can actually measure easily, more easily than something that's printed, right?
Yeah, definitely. We can very directly see the views on the video, so that's a really clear indicator of just the engagement and the reach of those videos. I find resources that have a lot more imagery and infographics are definitely just resources that provide the information in a short, easy to understand way are more engaged with, which makes sense.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And something like a video, you can be very precise with how you measure it. You can even tell how long people watch something. At what point they drop off. Have they watched it with the sound on? The sound of the technology that we have at our disposal has been an incredible asset It's just how we use it to the good of humanity. And what I say is that we create human translations for humans. Yes, there's technology that can translate, but it won't reach the same, won't have the same effect. Having said that, technology can be used very, very effectively to measure, to produce, to create content that really resonates. Once upon a time, it was so expensive to create videos. Now everyone's got a camera in their phone, and it can also be a lot of fun. So that was all those positive things. But what are some of the challenges that you found that you've come across as a client of a translation company, and how were they resolved?
I think some of the ones we've already touched on, just challenges in terms of what if we make this resource and no one's using it. Like we don't want to be translating resources just for the sake of it. We want to be making sure that they're purposeful, they're useful, and they're reaching the people we want them to reach. So doing a lot of that scoping prior does definitely help. Providing the information in that clear to understand way is also can kind of help overcome that challenge. Another challenge, I think, particularly in this space, because we are, I guess, providing health-based messages, making sure that we're not offending anyone, or there's no miscommunication, or we're not providing anything that's culturally inappropriate, is definitely a challenge and something we want to avoid. That community checking and that thorough process that you provide at Polaron, I think, really helps us to overcome those challenges.
No, that's great. And there's a lot of discussion actually out of what you've just said online. I've just had a look, and one of the things people were saying is that it's also a good idea to check what else is available, that you don't always have to create things from scratch. Maybe there's an organization that's already covered the topic. Maybe there are resources that can be reused, but also I think, and I don't know whether you found that, is that different communities, there's diversity within diversity, and different communities expect information to be presented to them differently. Mm-hmm. They engage differently. They have different lived experience, a different time in Australia. So sometimes those messages have to be adjusted to the community to be the most effective. And of course, for a lot of clients, one of the biggest challenges is also the budget, because it is not cheap to do translation well. So I think if it is done with the community and with active participation of translators, and bearing in mind that at the end of every single resource, there's someone that's going to be reading it, someone that's going to be making health, legal, or life decisions about what we're going to tell them, is also very important, because that way we can affect change and provide culturally and linguistically appropriate services. So that's another thing when we plan translation project, budgets need to be taken into consideration, of course, too, and we try and maximize it as much as we can when we work with clients, but it's a big job. Do you ever, Kirsten, get feedback from the community that we work with? Have you ever had something that we brought up to your attention that was a bit surprising, or maybe stopped you in your tracks a little?
No, I haven't had anything to date. Granted, I've only been in this role since September last year, so potentially there might be something coming, but no, nothing to date, which I guess is a positive. We've had some good feedback in terms of some of the translated resource that we have provided. So,
and I also do believe that it's a testament to the way that the organization writes and prepares the information, and is very open to trying different and innovative approaches to how the source text is created, because I've said that already, but it's so much easier and better to start off with something that's really well written, because then the translators don't have to guess what we're trying to say, and it's also more cost effective when it's simplified and written in plain English. Well, thank you, Kirsten, for that part of our session. We do have plenty of questions online, so I'm going to hand over to Carla and Daniela to ask some. There's some very interesting discussion happening online, so we'll bring that into this conversation as well, please.
Thank you very much, Eva. It was a very insightful conversation. And yes, as you said, more questions are just like popping up. And one of those is like, there are many wonderful translated resources in different fields, such as health, social services, legal. But a lot of work needs to be done to make professionals aware that those resources exist and offer them to their own clients. How do you appropriately disseminate translation within the communities?
That's a great question. So perhaps, Kirsten, you would like to tell us how Lung Foundation does it?
Yeah, sure. So this is something that's come up recently with Polaron, actually. So we have worked together recently to disseminate some of our resources in an upcoming newsletter, and we've been having some ongoing conversations about the best way to disseminate some of our translated resources. We also use, I guess, traditional in terms of targeted social media and Google search campaigns. That's our main source of dissemination to the community. We also do quite a lot of stakeholder engagement specific to, I guess, the industries that we're targeting, and just by word of mouth and follow-up, letting them know that we do have these translated resources and providing them to them as often as possible.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. So I think it's a fantastic question, whoever's asked it, because developing resources in language is one thing. Making them work is another. And as Kirsten said, there needs to be a variety of approaches, because not everyone has a phone. Not everyone has a computer. Some people actually prefer and acquire information old school way. So I think whenever we want to communicate with the communities, we have to look at what their preferences are, where they hang around. Are they using Viber? Are they using WhatsApp? Are they on Facebook groups? Do they congregate in clubs? How can we reach them in the most effective way? And that's not easy. And it does require building of trust, and certainly making inroads into the community in a respectful way, and making them aware that there's this information available, and it's not just sitting on our website. It's a living and breathing document that has a purpose of educating the communities. So hopefully we've answered your question there to some extent. But, you know, all the engagement strategies that organizations need to do to properly reach into the communities is not something that's easy, because you know, we've seen it through COVID. Now, it's great that the governments have translated stuff, but the question was where the community is receiving it. So nowadays we have to be a lot more creative and a lot more hands-on, a lot more grassroots with the communities that we want these translations to go to, for them to actually take notice and act on whatever advice we're giving them. Hopefully that answered your question. Over to you, Carla.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that I really love the efforts that Lung Foundation is doing from the start of our collaboration with other team members like Maria. The amount of pages on the document was really big, and Lung Foundation was very agile into making the message very concise and practical. And having it translated with the community members along, it's you know, one of the particular things that we do to assure that the translations are culturally appropriate and also engaging to them. And like I just said, Kirsten, it makes sense. And now I'm seeing like how Lung Foundation is going through the journey of disseminating this information. I see they are very they have a lot of engagement through the social medias. I follow them on LinkedIn, and I always get the latest news about vaping and how to maintain your lungs healthy, but they also have great resources, printed resources too. And as you said, Eva, each audiences have their own preferred ways of formats, channels to disseminate the information, but also like platforms like this, where everyone that are seen as there now know about Lung Foundation, and if there's any organizations that might require information about occupational lung healthy at lungs, they can go to Lung Foundation webpage, and now they can find those brochures available and those quizzes and all those resources that has been translated.
Thanks, Carla. Daniela, do we have more questions?
Yes, we do. And I would like to, I think that this is a question that is easy to reply, if we could say, but someone is asking, what is the most important step for a translation project? And listen to you all, I will say that every single step is important, but planning your translation project is perhaps the most important one, just like from scratch. So I don't know who would like to share. What do you think that is the most important step?
I need to ask you how you managed all the stress and complexity of the project that had 500 different people working on it, Daniela. I think you might need to answer that question.
Well, I think that project was successful in terms of planning and understanding what was the thing that we were doing, and that will help us just like to provide directions, to also to communicate better with the clients, to let them know what are the things that maybe we should do or we shouldn't do, give clear instructions to our translators and community members across the project, and also to allow that the different project managers that support the project will know that they have to do and what is the way that they have to do the best for the project. So yes, I think that at least for me, the most important step is to understand what we need, why we need that, and how we can just like reach and just work together to have the best approach for the communities, because that at the end of the day, that is like the objective for us, the aim for us.
That's right. And just going back to that particular one, so this was the Voice to Parliament translation of fact sheets and videos into, I think, 65 languages. I think the complexity, well, every project is different because you'll have different pressures, you'll have different priorities. So for that one was to get it out into the community as quickly as we could, as there was a lot of misinformation out there. And we wanted to cover as many languages as we could because there was a date on which everybody had to go and vote in the referendum. But other projects have different priorities. So for example, for Kirsten, what would that be? So for you, it would be, I guess, accuracy and correct information being rolled out across different communities. Is that right? Or is there something else that's more important than that?
No, I think that covers it. Yeah, the accuracy, making sure that the resource is, I guess, yeah, clear and able to be understood, and communicating those difficult health topics in a way.
Because the information around lung health and occupational lung health can be quite complex, as you say. So it's also about, you just can't dump things onto a community and kind of expect them to absorb it all. So it's a journey. And I think it's also a matter of building trust with each community and chunking the information in a way that it's not going to turn them off the topic. So all of that is work in progress. So whenever projects are planned, that's always kind of in the back of your minds, I guess, as well as is ours, to make sure that communities will get the right information at the right time. But it's a journey that's going to take some time if they haven't been exposed to this information before in language. Cool. Daniela, I think we might have time for maybe one more question.
Yes, one more question, and I would like to ask this to Carla. How do you know which resources should be translated and into which languages?
Yes, great. So that's one of the steps of planning your project. Know your audience. Who is the audience? Who's the person that is going to receive this information or that you want to communicate with? So each audience has different profiles. So you can see by the information that you are providing in which format could be the best. One example is we work a lot in the health space, as you can see, with Lung Foundation, but with other health organizations. There was a project about breastfeeding and pregnancy, and some of the languages that were selected were for rare and emerging languages, including Dinka. So also, as you know, Dinka has lots of dialects, and it depends on where the audience was located or which part of that country they came from to Australia. Because it could happen that dialects can be very different within each other, and you might think this is accurate for you, and it's not in the end. You cannot understand it. And also, we've seen that in the age group and the gender that these resources were targeted to, the literacy rates in their language was very low. So translating this and put it into a brochure on a web page, it was not going to be effective to the final audience. So we recommended to do it in audio resource and in the different dialects of the audience, because there were Dinka speakers for Boer dialect and for Reg dialect as well. So knowing who is your audience, it's a step that it's crucial to know also what's the format you should communicate and should have the translations into. As Kirsten say, for them, having videos is very engaging. Social media tells as well. In this case, it was breastfeeding for a certain community, that audio was the best resource for them.
So it's really tailoring not just the message, but the dissemination strategy and channels to the people that are that this is information is aimed at, essentially what we're talking about. And unfortunately, I don't know, but it's not often that we can just tick off boxes and park the information on a website and people will find it. It's just not how it works, because we also need to bear in mind that some communities reach for the information to back home, let's put it that way. And it may be completely different to what we promote here as far as health promotion. So, for example, Pap smear, Pap testing has changed over the last 10 years massively here in Australia, but not everywhere around the world. So if communities aren't given access to this accurate and current information, it may, in a real way, affect their health. So we try and be topical and also very engaging, but also go to where communities are. So I think we've done, people. That was super interesting. Hopefully people didn't find this topic too dry, but it is a lot of work behind the scenes, and we are very, very grateful to have hosted Kirsten today, and we heard your perspective, which is so valuable. So we hope to inspire other clients and reassure them that, yes, it can be a bit hard, but, it's doable. So I just wanted to say a big thank you, Kirsten, for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to talk through all of these things.
Wonderful. So over to you, Danny and Carla now.
Thank you very much. So if you have any language service related inquiries, please contact Carla at carla.f@polaron.com.au. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn for more Polaron information. You can simply scan the QR code or look for us as a Polaron Language Services on LinkedIn. If you have any feedback for us, please fill out our survey link that is in the comment section below. And also wanted to say a big thank you to Kirsten, Carla, and Eva. It has been a very wonderful conversation, and we hope that you have a lovely rest of the day.
Thanks, Daniela.
Thank
And
you,
I do want to
everyone.
say, just to give a plug just very quickly to Lung Foundation Australia, if you know anyone that needs this information, it's out there. Please reach out and use it, because that's what it's there for.
Thank you.